Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Ibtisham Solomons, manager for the Rising Star Female Forum. I'd like to say thank you all for joining us here today, celebrating the month of breast cancer awareness at the Epiroc and Reality Wellness Women and Wellness webinar. I'm sure you all can agree it's been quite a year for everyone. Who could have possibly predicted an international pandemic and global shutdown of business? National lockdowns, school closures, Zoom meetings, social distancing, homeschooling. Everyone's world was turned completely on its head, and it's not over yet. Many roles and responsibilities has changed this year, with research showing that the lockdown has been 4 times more stressful for women than men. So we figured, what better theme for our next female forum than women and wellness? All of you here today are survivors and great achievers. Otherwise, you would have never made it to the later stages of the Grad Star and the Rising Star programs. But in all honesty, I'd actually like you guys to ask yourself this question. Do we always give ourselves as much credit as we do, or more time for ourselves as we do to our external environment? Well, today is your time to shine, and we're here to discuss us. With that being said, please feel free to keep the questions flowing in the chat log. Don't forget to share, comment, and post as well. Also, this is a safe space to share and to be heard. And remember, you are definitely not alone. To top things off, Epiroc has generously offered one lucky attendee a wellness hamper. So do ensure that you stand out. And please remember, we have an interactive social media platform as well. And we'd love you to like us, comment, and post your feedback during the event as well as after the event. So just a little bit about our amazing speakers and presenters today. First up, we have Catherine Kutzer. She is the Regional Communications Manager for Epiroc and has supported both the Grad Star and the Rising Star program since she started there almost 3 years ago. She was previously Academy Manager at Epiroc and has presented many workshops across a variety of subjects. And then we have Charmaine, who is the Director of Reality Wellness Group, a dynamic wellness company originally set out to help companies and employees tackle the rising HIV and AIDS crisis. This was just the first step in doing good. With almost 20 years of being in the wellness industry, Charmaine has a pivoting mechanism to addressing mental and physical health in our country. She has entrenched values in loyalty, accountability, and integrity, and has worked with companies for almost 2 decades, including Epiroc, where she has pioneered each company's own roadmap to wellness. When she is not providing a springboard for mental, emotional, and physical well-being, Charmaine is catching up on her reading, cooking for her family, and combining the digital world for inspiration and opportunities to continue doing good every day. And then finally, we have Laura Barker, MD of Black Park Productions and founder of the Rising Star Woods program, who will be joining us later to conduct the Q&A session. Now, without further ado, I'm sure you guys are dying with anticipation. I'd like to welcome to stage Catherine and Charmaine to start the session.
Hi, everyone. So just
hi, everyone.
Very quickly, just thank you to Black Box for giving us this opportunity to sponsor one of the female forums. Diversity and inclusion is very important to Epiroc, and it's just one way that we're able to gain a bit of traction, I think, and interact with women. It's a pity that it is virtual. Face-to-face is always great, and I think we get a lot more opportunity to interact and to learn from one another. So with that in mind, as already said, please make full use of the chat function today. Any thoughts, comments you have as we go along, any questions that you have, please post to the chat function. It's the best way that we can engage today. And then Charmaine is the owner of the Reality Wellness Group, and Epiroc has had a relationship with Charmaine's company for more than 15 years. She manages, amongst other things, our wellness program and our employee psychosocial program. So she's an expert when it comes to wellness. Before I hand over to her, though, I thought I'd share some personal experience and perhaps provide a little bit of context for today. So the picture you can see is one of my terrible three. He's the youngest, and this picture really characterizes what the first couple of months of lockdown were like for me. I think on the one hand, it's quite funny, and it helped to provide some humor and to see the lighter side of things. We've definitely got some memories for the books. But on the other hand, it's a bit of a mask, and it hides what lockdown was really like for me as a woman. I recently listened to a podcast where Barbara Annis is interviewed, and she rattles off some research and indicates that COVID has been 4 times more stressful for women than it has been for men. And I think I relate to this. With 3 small children, I had to tackle homeschooling. My oldest is 8, he's in grade 2. The school expected at least 3 hours of schooling a day, and that was the parents' responsibility. That fell on my shoulders. Over and above that, I had 2 small ones that I had to keep entertained and out of Zoom meetings. Being in communications, especially as we went into COVID, I found that my workload increased. You know, I was in demand quite a bit as we needed to communicate with suppliers, customers, and employees around all the new regulations and what was happening with the business. And as someone that suffered with depression with all 3 of my children, I literally felt the signs of anxiety and depression creeping in. With that in mind, from an employer's perspective, Epiroc does an employee engagement survey once a year just to touch base with our employees and to see what they need from us, what we can do better. This year, we conducted the survey, but we did it slightly different. And we tailored the questions around COVID-19. One of these questions was around what is most stressful for our employees at the moment? Where do they need the most support? And the results came in, and one of the key findings, one of the major feedback that we had was that childcare and family care was a major concern for a lot of the women within our organization. So as we do as employers, we all got around the virtual boardroom and started tackling how are we going to solve this problem, or how are we going to better support our female colleagues. And ideas such as childcare allowances and a creche on site, these ideas were tabled, but we actually took a step back and we said, no, let's engage with the employees more and try and get some more information. And there we engaged with Reality Wellness, and Charmaine and her team actually reached out to all the women within our organization. They contacted them all via telephone, checked in just to see how they were doing, and to see if they had children, what kind of support they needed and where they were struggling. And to me, the results were quite interesting. I'm not going to go into detail, but we were jumping to building a creche on site and looking at childcare allowances. That's not the kind of support that was asked for. That's not the feedback that we were given. So what did we uncover? From a childcare perspective, a lot of the women within our organization were experiencing difficulties in adjusting to this new routine. In particular, how do they balance home and school? Secondly, there was a lot of anxiety, and particularly around children contracting COVID-19. Reality actually picked up that this anxiety was higher as we went into level nursery and children returned to school. So what did they ask us in terms of company supports? It wasn't a credit and it wasn't salary related. It was more respect for personal time and weekends. I don't know about yourselves or the organizations where you work, but I've definitely seen a blur in traditional working hours. So that made sense. And empathy. There was general comments around just being able to put ourselves in one another's shoes and understand, I guess, to seek to understand who had children and how it was impacting on their day-to-day life, and to have some empathy in that respect. And then they specifically asked for more COVID education or more COVID resources in terms of looking after their children. During the survey, we also saw an increase in the uptake for our employee assistance program. And through reality, we reported more cases in terms of anxiety, seeking out adjustments in coping skills. Something that we hadn't considered was bereavement and grief. You know, unless it was an employee or an employee spouse, we weren't aware of deaths in the family, whether it was COVID related or not, and the impact of not being able to go to a funeral because of regulations, or in fact being alone and having to go through the anniversary of a death, for example. These created a need for more psychosocial support. And then obviously there was more depression, or there was a higher increase of depression and mood disorders. So I thought this served as quite a good introduction. One, just my own personal experience during lockdown, and still during lockdown. I think we're still juggling lots of balls. Second of all, how we jump to conclusions about what kind of support we need, and how taking a step back actually has helped us to better support our employees. And with that in mind, it makes sense, seeing as Reality Wellness was the provider that helped us navigate COVID waters, that Charmaine shares some information or some pointers with us from a wellness and women perspective. So I'm gonna sign out and over to Charmaine.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, I think for a lot of females, COVID has been a huge challenge. We see it through our call center. The engagement has increased, levels of depression. And even if you just look, that only 15% of women surveyed say they're happy with their lives. I think that's something we all need to ask ourselves. We've definitely seen it. You know, COVID for all of us has been an experience. And I always say to my children that we should document this, because hopefully we'll never experience this again in our lives, but how we coped. Because naturally we teach our brains to get over this. But for a lot of us, it's been traumatic, it's been overwhelming. My own personal experience with COVID is that I lost both my parents during the last 7 months. And I think just from that, from a mental health and wellness point of view, it was genuinely the most stressful time I've been through. Running a business, worrying about, you know, if you're going to pay salaries at the end of the month, ensuring that you're engaging with your companies that you're working with, ensuring that people are being helped. It was extremely stressful. And I think the thing that went out the back door most was my happiness. I just forgot how to be happy during the last while. And yes, we picked up through the Epiroc survey that grief came up a lot. And it's something we've picked up with a lot of our companies. And having going through grief myself, I never understood grief on the level that I've experienced now. And I have deep respect for it. And I realize that so many women don't talk out. So people don't know how to deal with grief. So a simple thing of just, if someone's okay, is one part of going through lockdown is to be normal, is to actually say, I'm not okay. I'm not coping today. I'm here. Even warning my husband that, you know, sending him a message and go, not a good day. I'm coping. Because I just find as women, we just think that we don't communicate with people, but we do. So if you look at the stats on global women's well-being, you can see that, we're going to just go into the next slide, that only 15% of women are happy, which leaves that 80% believe they will not fulfill their potential. So even during lockdown, we're still pushing that we have to do more. We haven't just simply taken a step back to go, it's okay. It's okay not to do everything on our to-do list. You just look at more stats, 66% are uninspired. How many of you sitting here today have felt uninspired in the last while? No new ideas, uninspired to look after yourself, never mind coming up with work ideas. 68% are sleep deprived and experience signs of burnout. We've been running more and more workshops around burnout than ever before. We are engaging with mental motivation because people just have such high levels of anxiety, and majority of the people coming forward are women. So if you look at the report that we're engaging with, even gut health, my daughter is 19, she's doing online classes, but if we look at, even I've just looked at my personal experience with her, she developed IBS during this because of the stress, which we don't ever bring back to what they're living with as a young woman going into this new life of first year of studies. So mental health issues relating to our work does impact our day-to-day lives. And I've definitely experienced that. I think a lot of women are. And I often say to women, are you happy? And it's a question to ask yourself, are you happy? Are you happy where you are now? Are you happy in your career? Are you happy with life as it is right now? And then not to do nothing, which a lot of us do. We sort of just think, well, we don't and we can't. And checking in with people if they're okay, which a lot of us don't. And that's just what I found through my COVID experience is it's okay not to be okay. It's okay for me to fall apart and feel the grief on another level that I never could comprehend, not just to carry on like I always have done before. If we look at COVID, this is a survey that was done by the World Health Organization, that 26.3% of women worldwide reported having started or increased substance abuse. Not abuse, use. And I'm sure a lot of you would agree that wine or a gin and tonic has become something as part of the end of a day. I know that I've definitely increased. My waistline has increased due to the substance that I'm accumulating a bit more. So, but to be honest about it and to realize that it's okay as long as you're aware of it. Increased anxiety, 63.5% of women. Depression. So there is a problem out there, but the sad reality is we're not talking about it. So it always comes back to self-care. And I mean, perfectly put by Katie Reed, is self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. And I think, ladies, a lot of us have leftovers, and to ask you the question, how many feel that your self-care is a priority? How many of you on this group feel that you've made self-care a priority? I don't know if anybody's willing to share or engage to let us know if you have, and maybe how you've let self-care be important, that it's not just what the leftovers are. Racy.
Sean,
Anybody?
yeah. Sean, you carry on and then we can have a look at the comments when we're done.
Perfect. So in terms of self-care, we've all heard about it. I'm not here to give you a self-care lecture, I promise, because we all know about it. We all know what we need to be doing and how we need to be doing it. So if we could just, Catherine, maybe go on to the next slide, is why do we not do self-care? And that's quite an important question. We all know we have to, but we don't. And just from a personal experience is everything else came before it. So my physical health stopped because I had to cook for a family of 6. I had a sickly mother that I had to take care of. Everything else became the priority. And often we don't sit down, look and go, why is self-care not something that we should be doing? Why are we not doing self-care? Because we're so busy worried about the next deadline. I've seen with emails how so many companies I'm working with are emailing after hours when I engage with some of the ladies that I work with, I say, why are you emailing at 9 o'clock at night? And that's the problem, is that we are extending our boundaries. We're not putting the boundaries in place. We feel like we always have to ask permission. We forget to just make ourselves the highest priority in going, is this okay? And an interesting thing happened to me today. My daughter's going to go back to university just to experience a bit of life. And this morning I had a meeting at 9:30, and normally I'd be in the office at 8 o'clock. And driving here, she was with me. I said, let's go for breakfast. And she was like, oh, wow, Mom, I can't believe it. And we went and had the most divine breakfast together. And I sat there and I thought, it's so nice just to do something for me that will fill my heart. But previously, I wouldn't have done it because I'd be sitting there with guilt and worrying what email I haven't answered, what I haven't done, sitting with a knot in my stomach, checking my phone for emails that I might have missed or who's looking for me. So even today, I sat there and I thought, what am I doing differently? Why did I actually take time out? And the answer is I just decided to breathe and to let her know that it's going to be okay, and I can put my needs first because I couldn't make up that time. So self-care is not just about stuff, it's also realizing you can't make up that time. So if you don't put yourself as a priority, you can never, ever make up that time. And with losing both my parents during this time, the one thing that has saddened me most is we work our whole life to plan for our future, retirement, and I look at what they've left behind. And I think they worked so hard, and I don't believe they put their self-care at a high level, but yet they're gone. And everything they've left behind is there. So we say we don't have time for self-care, but the problem is when you're gone, there is no more time for self-care. And that's why it's so critically important to look at self-care and make sure that we do for ourselves. But so many women, lots of us, don't do self-care at all, purely because we have so many wifely duties to do, parenting, we put everything else before than what we would normally do. So I think my advice, and I said I'm not going to lecture you on self-care, but what I've picked up is keep it real. Let's be real women. We're not looking for the perfect woman, we're looking for real women. And that's what I have just seen is we want to be the perfect persona, superwoman. We want to just do it all. From planning holidays, work. Last night, my husband said to me, what are we doing in December? I said, I don't know. What are you planning? He said, oh, am I planning the holiday? I said, yes. If you don't plan a holiday, we're not going on one. And it was so nice to just hand over something, where before I would have just got on and done it. So often as women, we're not real. We just keep adding to our to-do list. But how often do we say to our partners, to our colleagues, to our friends, when we need help, when we're not coping, when our partners need to know what we're in? So we always feel that we have to do one up on our partners or be, and often they're not experiencing it. It's us because we're not real. And I've definitely learned in the last few weeks just to be real. So when I'm having a bad day, it's okay to fall apart at my desk and have a cry. It's okay to tell people that you're really sad today and you may not be in the best space. It's okay to communicate to your kids. It's okay to cry, but to be real, which I find so many women feel the persona is we can't be real. We have to just keep going. So in terms of health, wellness, looking at how you manage yourself at this time, there's 3 simple things that I've learned over this time. And the one is to uplift. If more women could uplift other women, I just find women don't uplift each other. And I actually give you a bit of a challenge to look around your group of people you engage with and uplift them. when you see that they look nice or they've done something really nice, uplift them. A little thing I found really helpful was when there is grief, often people don't know what to do. And it does affect people's mental health. You just need to simply send the person a heart because they know then that you're thinking about them. And that uplifts a woman. I had a lot of those in the last few weeks. And it's amazing how when you wake up in the morning and someone has sent you a message, and I felt so uplifted to get through my day. So look at uplifting women. Be the positive force. Don't be someone that finds things wrong. I know Louise Hayes once said, you know, if we had to not complain about someone or complain at all, but rather lift people up, we wouldn't necessarily have much to say in 24 hours. So be conscious of what you're saying and rather uplift people. Uplift the women in your life. Another thing is to encourage women. You know, when someone's battling with where they're at, whether it's their weight, their workplace, rather encourage them. Be the one that motivates them to get through it. I know I engage with a lot of my clients, and many of them are women, and to talk openly, but encourage them. I know I had one of my clients recently that applied for a job, and she said, "Oh, I don't think I should do it." I said, "Go for it." She said, "No, but what happens if I don't succeed?" I said, "Well, what happens if you don't apply? But do it." And she actually got the position. And she phoned me after. She said, "You know, I'm not convinced I would have applied if you didn't motivate me." And I said, "But imagine if you didn't." So take a step back and encourage people around you. The rewards you'll get from feedback and how it motivates and uplifts you is amazing. Just try it. Try and encourage people around you. And then the last thing I want to share is, are you okay? We don't ask this enough. And that's why we have so many mental health issues and suicides in South Africa, is we never seem to take time just to ask if someone's okay. Now, I know as women, we have this gut instinct and we can feel things and sometimes pick up on it, but we don't always have the time to check in on someone. So you may think of a friend and go, "Oh, I must check how Catherine is." But you get busy in your day and you get sidetracked, but she plays on your mind and you forget about it. I'm urging you to ask people if they're okay, because 9 times out of 10, when you are thinking of someone or you pick up on someone, that "are you okay" will actually make the difference. It does allow people to know that there is help. I mean, even this month, our mental health campaign is "Are you okay?" to encourage people to ask, "Are you okay?" Because people then often feel that someone cares. So as women, look and just take the time to say, "Are you okay?" Check your colleagues, your friends, your co-workers and say, "Are you okay?" when you can feel that they're not. Because as women, we often know when something's not okay. We just don't always think we can ask. But if you keep it real, it's okay to ask, and it's okay not to be okay. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or if there's been any feedback around how women have coped during lockdown, what your experience has been, what you have found.
Laura, I think you're going to rock and roll here.
Okay. Here I am. Hi, everybody. So I see I've come back on to manage the Q&A. We've got a good 25 minutes, but there's a lot of activity in the chat group. Catherine, I see you've been answering some of the questions as we go along as well. Catherine, can I ask you some of the questions?
Sure. If I can't answer, I'll pass them along to Charmaine.
Absolutely. Well, if you maybe decide who's the best person to answer it, we'll move on from there. Cool. But the very first question that popped up, well, then we'll start with the first one. I'll jump around a bit. But Yolani Pretorius, she wants to know, it's a big question. What are the 5 most important things in life? Yeah, I made that face too, Catherine.
I think it is a good question. I've actually had a couple of conversations around something similar with some colleagues, and I think 16 years ago, when I left varsity and I entered the workplace, I knew very much what my plan was. I knew I wanted to get married, I wanted to have kids, I wanted to be a manager. And where I kind of, maybe it's midlife crisis, I don't know, where I kind of find myself now is I haven't taken the time out to reassess my plans. I've achieved some things, and I'm not unhappy, but I'm restless at the moment. So I can't give you 5. I have 3 that are important to me. One is who I am the legacy I leave as a mother. So I'm very in touch and in tune with, the guiding principles, if you like, that I have of being a mom. I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, so it's very important that I have that with my kids. The second one would be, I'm very passionate about thought leadership in communications, and I love learning, so it's important for me to share what I've learned in that field with others. So I'm quite active around that. And then just the kind of leader, or I guess person that I want to be in my current workplace, that I stay true to myself. What I am learning, and some of it's around conversations with Charmaine and wellness and a little bit of therapy as well, is to try and find out what is important to me, for me personally, so that I can start engaging in better self-care. And some of that's around general health and well-being. But a lot of it, I think, is more introspective and my dreams, my goals, my aspirations, that kind of thing.
I think that's a very full answer. And I know that I'm not supposed to be answering, but from my experience, I would like to say gratitude. Just be aware of everything we have, and we have so much. So many of us have so much compared to other people, and just the smallest thing, just having your favorite croissant for breakfast, whatever it may be, just wake up with the gratitude, and I think that can help. That for me, certainly, can help lift you. Charmaine, you're on mute, Charmaine.
Sorry.
Sorry, on mute.
A big thing is gratitude, I agree, but one thing I've learned is to be grateful for your body. As women, we don't always acknowledge this body and the person we are. So often when I journal in the morning, I always do my gratitude, but I've also learned to write one thing I love about myself, and I can't repeat it. So whether it's my body, my hair today, the fact that I gave the beggar a peanut butter sandwich, but to find something good about ourselves is something I've learned, instead of finding things that are wrong. So when you stand in front of the mirror, don't be so critical. Be grateful for the body that is healthy, that it is taking you through life, and not to live with regrets. That's one thing. I had a mother that was extremely unhealthy. She would never exercise. She would never put her self-care first. Everything else came before it. And when she was on her dying bed, she said to me, I regret not taking care of myself. And that stuck with me, in that don't live with regret. So as women, we often think we have time. We don't always. So be kind to yourself, be kind to your body, that you don't live with regret.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think one of the themes coming up in the chat is how women, and it's come up all the way through actually, how women take too much on, how we don't say no, how we just pick up the pieces. And that's just what we continually do. And how do we learn to stop doing that, to start saying no? I think Nelly Zaba has a question that's related to this. She said, what would you say would be, and it has been covered a bit, but from a personal perspective, what would you say are the main key issues specifically affecting women? But how can we move forwards? How can we pick it up and run with that and make it better?
You want me to go, Catherine? So, what we've seen a lot of is adjustment, is that women think that they just need to getting to this new normal, and they haven't given themselves time to adjust and do things wrong and fall apart. So we've definitely seen women have taken strain adjusting to what's happening. But as women, we need to give ourselves space that it's okay not to do everything as you should. And quite a nice analogy is we've all got balls in our life. We've got glass balls and plastic balls. And some of those balls you're going to drop, and you know which balls are glass, and you can't drop those balls. But we think all our balls are glass, and they're not. So prioritize which ones are plastic ones, because they can drop and you can pick them up again and it's okay. But make your glass balls smaller and prioritize them. But adjustment has been something we've seen so much through our call center. We're picking it up, meaning every company. Women have really battled with trying to do everything. But give yourself time to adjust and pick your balls, basically. Because we don't have to have all the answers, just women feel we do.
I love that analogy. I've never heard that before. And even as you're talking, I've got my balls in my head and I'm placing them. I think Immaculate also refers to that. We had a comment from Immaculate who said that she herself has enforced the lunchtime. But in addition to enforcing the fact she takes a lunchtime, she's ensured and made sure that she doesn't feel guilty about it. And I think that's the one thing as women is that we beat ourselves up and we feel guilty about the things we're not doing in such a way that it brings us down, rather than lifting us up and acknowledging what we do. Janice has also commented that engaging on this forum itself and taking the time to sit here and learn about this and being here is also a form of self-care in itself. So I think we should congratulate everyone who's here, but also thank you, ladies, for putting it on. I mean, that's amazing. Mabel says, how have you managed to say no and avoid the sense of guilt in not meeting everything in your to-do list? Straight up. Thank you for listening to me, Mabel. Who wants to take that on? Are you back on mute?
So I've got a really simple example. And I battle to say no as well. And some of that is just because I want to be, maybe it's FOMO. I want to be involved in everything and I want to know everything that's going on. But I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. During lockdown, it was so that I had time to get some work done before the kids had to do their homeschooling. And now my body's just in that routine. So now I get up at 4 and I try and get some exercise in. I've downloaded those delightful 30 days, 5K apps and trying to get some running in. But I've been on leave and I'm a bit behind on work and my to-do list is in my head and it's climbing. So this morning I woke up at 4 and I was like, no, I'm not going to run. I'm going to crack on with this to-do list. And I was quite strict with myself. I said no. And I did actually prioritize myself and I'd exercise instead of getting the work done. And to be fair, I'm no further behind right now than I would have been had I spent this morning working. It's a simple example, but I think sometimes it doesn't have to be big grand gestures.
Can you hear me, Emma? I don't know if I'm on mute.
Yes, you get that.
So one thing I've learned with saying no is just the way you say it. And the simple thing is we don't ask for help. So we think we have to do everything. And even like when my husband offered to do the holiday, I've always done the holidays because I'm a control freak and I want to know where we're going, how, when and what. But he's really enjoying it. And I'm looking forward to the surprise, but have I ever left control? But I just simply don't have the capacity right now. So it wasn't no outright. It was just like, how about you do the holiday? And he was like, are you serious? So I think as women, you can say no to things that we don't all have to be involved in. Sometimes it's us that have the issues with saying no, not the person that would be receiving it.
Yes, sometimes we feel, we don't even realize, but we do feel we control everything around us because we take on that role. Something I'm picking up in the chat is this guilt thing. 2 or 3 people, Mabel and Lorato, a few people just want to know want some advice on how do you avoid the sense of guilt in not meeting everything you have to do, or how do you handle this, the Lorato, how do you handle the disappointment with not being able to fit everything into your schedule? So it's just, how do you be a bit kinder to yourself, I think. I don't know who wants to take that on. Mute.
Unmute, Charmaine.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Is the guilt, yes, can come. But what I've learned is to not take it on so much and rather just be kinder by being more vulnerable. And I know that sounds crazy, but we as women are often not vulnerable because we think we can't. And then when we're not vulnerable, we add more pressure to ourselves, which adds more guilt. And being vulnerable is actually something that we should all seek to do in life, because by being vulnerable, we put ourselves out there. And we then stop feeling so guilty about everything because we feel real. So we all feel guilty about stuff, but a good way is to balance which balls you're going to feel guilty about. The glass ones or the, if you leave your kid at school, well, now you can't in a lot of cases. That's okay. You could be guilty about that. And I've done it. I've left every single one of my kids at school over the years. And they're older now and they survived and they talk about it and they tell people. I had a son that his appendix almost burst and he was lying on the bathroom floor asking God to please help him. But he got over it and he survived. Did I feel guilty at the time? Most definitely. But it's what realizing people can survive, but being vulnerable helps with your guilt.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think anyone who's a mother here has certainly got some of those guilt moments. I remember as a child, my parents never, ever, ever picked me up on time. And I know that my limit before I get really annoyed is 40 minutes. So maybe it's not that bad. There's a really, Janet Duprier's in the audience. She's one of our long-term Rising Class supporters. And she said, sometimes we just need to practice, I believe you would say Getmo, which is good enough to move on. So thanks for that, Janet. Not everything has to be perfect. Let's move on to the next one. Zainab says, what tips do you have to parent better or encourage your daughters to think that it's okay not to be okay with women? How would you pass that on to your daughters so maybe they don't get to the stage where they have to even have these discussions?
I think, unfortunately, a lot of that is about being a role model. So, you don't want to provide conflicting, not evidence, I don't know what, conflicting information. So you need to start living, you need to internalize that, you need to learn from you. You can preach as much as you like, but if you're not living it, you're just going to confuse her because you're doing one thing but saying another thing. I honestly believe in being quite open and honest with my children, even though they're quite young, 8, 4, and 2. So within reason. In fact, I think my therapist has told me I'm maybe a little bit too forward with them sometimes. So you be a role model, and I think for me, it's actually educating my sons, my boys, also to be aware of some of the stereotypes or the expectations that are imposed upon us, and why we need to challenge them a little bit.
I agree. I think that's a good thing to mention our boys, because it's also, if you have got boys, to embrace them on the expectations and the role that they play as well. But the honesty is important.
I think absolutely. I mean, I think a major concern, as we've covered for women over lockdown, has been childcare. And could it be as simple that we didn't ask for help? Could it be that simple that we didn't sit there? We shouldn't have to. To be fair, we shouldn't have to sit down and set the rules and say, let's split this up. But what would have happened if we did do that?
I did.
I'm a single mom, so I don't know.
So there's this, and maybe I can share the link with Laura and share it with those who are interested afterwards, but there's a really interesting podcast, and she's got a couple of books as well, by Barbara Annis, and she talks about gender intelligence. And I found it quite interesting. So up until the early 1990s, as women, we were, medicine was communicating specific signs for heart attack. And in the early 1990s, they picked up that I think it was something like 76% of deaths from heart attacks were actually women. And that was because research was predominantly being done on men because they didn't want to worry about pregnancy and women's hormones impacting the studies. So they just assumed that men and women's bodies were the same and that we're neurologically wired the same. So this resulted in a shift in the way that we were thinking, and they actually started to do quite a bit of research on the way a woman's brain works versus the way a man's brain works. And there's about 100 documented differences. But one of them is actually the way that we deal with stress. So men, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree with me, but men will get home from a day at work and they literally shut down. Like you'll ask them, what are they thinking? And they'll say nothing. According to this research, they are genuinely thinking nothing. Their brain shuts down so that the testosterone in their bodies can rebuild because that's how they fight stress. Whereas a woman, we walk in the door, our brains don't shut down. We've got all these neural pathways. We walk in the door and work, if we're lucky, gets left at work. But then we're like, I haven't booked the dentist appointments. I've got to I'm reminding myself now I have to buy muffins for a cake sale at school tomorrow. I've got to remember to do this. Oh, the laundry's not been done. Have I filled in the COVID screening form? Our brains just don't turn off. So, and that's why we've experienced stress for COVID 4 times more than men. So yes, it's about asking for help. I genuinely think you have to tell, if you're lucky enough to have a partner at home, tell them what you need, how you need it, how they must do it. But some of it actually comes with accepting that we are wired differently and that, they're not going to experience the stress in the same way that we are.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of people would love to hear more. I mean, maybe we can share it to the attendees or share it in the chat later. I know I'd be very interested. A little bit related, Gapika has a question, and we're going to close up now, and I'm going to finish with the positive. But Gapika has a question saying, how did you manage to keep pushing forwards when it's so easy to bottle up during the past few months? Or is there anything that you held on to?
Sorry, I didn't hear that properly.
So how did you manage to keep pushing forwards personally when it's so easy to bottle things up? What was your guiding light? Where did you draw your strength?
So I did a lot of meditation, which I find people are scared of, but I found the quiet time of meditation definitely helped me. Journaling was something that I can't go without. And also I actually spoke to my partner more than I ever have. So, we would walk in the dark during hard lockdown because I was like, we have to get exercise done. So we'd sneak out at 5 o'clock in the morning and do our walk. But it created an opportunity for me to tell him how scared I was. I was scared of what I was facing with a sick parent. I was scared of my business. I was scared of what was coming. So that pushed me through because I actually realized he was there for me. And before, I would never have been that vulnerable, ever, because I didn't think he would be attracted to a vulnerable woman. But actually, it improved our relationship. So that's what I learned, was it was okay to be vulnerable and communicate. That's what pushed me through. But be kind to myself by giving the meditation and the journaling, which so many people don't.
Absolutely. I think that's an incredible story. How many years have you been together?
So it's my second marriage. I've been 12 years.
Wow. And this has given you the opportunity to deepen your relationship. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that was also a similar question asked by Yolani. I'm going to move topic a little bit to looking at the best things, because we've covered the best things. Zenup has said that a lot of us have all had to deal with the change and had to deal with moving virtual. But what was the best thing for us as females about moving virtual? I mean, how has it, is the best thing, and what was it for you?
For me, it was time with my kids. I didn't take maternity leave with any of my kids. Someone actually made a comment on the chat about having to work twice as hard to remain relevant during these times, because there've been a lot of retrenchments. That's how I felt with each of my pregnancies, that I couldn't take the maternity leave because I needed to be relevant. I still needed to be present and to be seen at work. So for me, this has given me the opportunity to pick my son from school and to spend some time with them in the afternoons, which I ordinarily would not have been able to do.
I think for me, it was that I was able to not rush, because I spent a lot of time visiting clients. So not having to drive to meetings has saved so much time that we could be creative. So even from a company point of view, I've really started to love what I do again. So we could have fun with clients. We ran lockdown challenges. We've just run a happiness challenge with a whole lot of companies for 9 weeks, and just do what I love, because I wasn't spending so much time in a car. And that's for me, is I also realize when you're getting job satisfaction, not from a pay slip, but from what you're really doing, it inspires you to do more. So that's what I benefited most.
Gives you the opportunity to actually follow your dreams and follow your heart and follow your chosen career path. But going back to you, Catherine, remaining relevant and overworking as throughout the entire test. Kathleen, I know, mentioned it, I think, about why do we feel the need to remain relevant so much that we push ourselves so hard?
I think because equality, diversity, they're trending topics now, and organizations have got targets in place and they're actively working towards it. There's a lot to be done in terms of organizational culture as well. And, I'd like to say that some of it is self-inflicted, that I impose this thought that I've got to work twice as hard. But the reality is we've still got a long way to go in South Africa, across the globe, on, I think, appreciating the differences that women and men bring to the table and accommodating them within the workplace. So some of it is self-imposed, but unfortunately a lot of it is, I think we still need to grow as organizations. Yeah.
Absolutely. This progress has been made. There's so much to do. I think on that note, we're winding up. It's actually on the hour. Does anybody have a farewell parting piece of advice they would like to share?
From the group, or you are?
Oh, sorry. I was asking either one of the presenters.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking the group. I was looking at Catherine. I think is, for me, just to be vulnerable and ask, and it's okay not to be okay. It's a simple thing to live by. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Catherine?
Yeah, I support. I'm learning. We're in the mining industry, so it's traditionally very male. And I, especially in COVID, I have learned to speak a little bit more about mental health issues that I've had in the past and that I've had during lockdown. And sometimes it's actually, it's very unnerving, because sometimes I get deathly silenced, and I just want someone to acknowledge and accept what I've said. But I think if we start talking more about these things, we'll remove the stigma, and we'll start normalizing it, and it will become, people will see it for what it is. It'll be a lot more accepting. So yeah, if you brave enough and you can be courageous, start showing your vulnerable side.
I think that's so true. And I want to thank you, ladies. There's a lot of thanks in the chat, and we'll send you the chats after. But I want to thank you, ladies, so much for making the time, for making this happen, for sharing your wealth of experience with the audience members here. And I'm going to leave you probably to go on to your next meetings now, because Catherine, it sounds like you never stop. And thank you very much. Thank you very much to Catherine. Thank you very much to Charmaine. We really enjoyed this session. And also thank you to Epiroc for sponsoring it and making it happen. As mentioned, we've got the social media. We'd love you all, anybody in the audience, any of the presenters. If you want to comment on social media, if you've got any further questions, you can feel free to private message us. And what I want to leave you with, I think, is the theme that we started the female forums with. We started the female forums last year, February was our very first one, with the theme "Lift as You Rise." We are here we're here together. We are all going through. We're all female. We're all going through one thing, one emotion. Let's be one. Let's share. Let's be vulnerable, and let's lift as you rise. Let's lift as we go along. So on that note, please keep an eye on the slides for our next webinars coming up. But thank you, everybody. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, Catherine. And we shall see you at the next one. Bye.